Petrus Peregrinus de Maricourt, Pierre Pelerin de Maricourt, or Peter Peregrinus of Maricourt, was a 13th-century French scholar who conducted experiments on magnetism and wrote the first extant treatise describing the properties of magnets. His work is particularly noted for containing the earliest detailed discussion of freely pivoting compass needles, a fundamental component of the dry compass soon to appear in medieval navigation. He also wrote a treatise on the construction and use of a universal astrolabe. Peregrinus's text on the magnet is entitled in many of the manuscripts of it Epistola. Peter Peregrini de Maricourt ad Sygerum de Foucaucourt, militem, de magnete, but it is more commonly known by its short title, Epistola de Magnete. The letter is addressed to an otherwise unknown Picard countryman named Sygerum de Foucaucourt, possibly a friend and neighbor of the author. Foucaucourt borders on the home area of Peregrinus around Maricourt, in the present-day department of the Somme, near Péronne. In only one of the 39 surviving manuscript copies the letter also bears the closing legend Actum in castris in obsidione luceria anno domini 1269, 8th die Augusti, which might indicate that Peregrinus was in the army of Charles, Duke of Anjou and King of Sicily, who in 1269 laid siege to the city of Lucera. However, given that only one manuscript attests this, the evidence is weak. There is no indication of why Peter received the sobriquet Peregrinus, but it suggests that he may have been either a pilgrim at one point or a crusader, and the attack on Lucera of 1269 had been sanctioned as a crusade by the Pope, so Petrus Peregrinus may have served in that army. You must realize, dearest friend, Peregrinus writes, that while the investigator in this subject misunderstand nature and not be ignorant of the celestial motions, he must also be very diligent in the use of his own hands, so that through the operation of the stone he may show wonderful effects. The content of the Epistola de Magnete. In his letter of 1269, Peregrinus explains how to identify the poles of the compasses. He also describes the laws of magnetic attraction and repulsion. The letters also contain a description of an experiment with a repaired magnet, as well as a number of compasses, one of which you'll be able to direct your steps to cities and islands and to any place whatever in the world. Indeed, the increasing perfection of magnetic compasses during the 13th century allowed navigators such as Vadino and Ugolino Vivaldi to strike out on voyages to unknown lands. The Epistola de Magnete is divided into two parts. Part 1. This is a section that serves as a model of inductive reasoning based on definite experiences and setting forth the fundamental laws of magnetism. He did not discover these laws but presented them in logical order. Part 1 discusses the physical properties of the lodestone and provides the first extant written account of the polarity of magnets. He was thus the first to use the word pole in this context. He provides methods for determining the north and south poles of a magnet, and he describes the effects magnets have upon one another, showing that like poles repel each other and unlike poles attract each other. He also treats the attraction of iron by lodestones, the magnetization of iron by lodestones, and the ability to reverse the polarity in such an induced magnet. Peregrinus attributed the Earth's magnetism to the action of celestial poles, rather than to the terrestrial poles of the planet itself. Part 2. This section describes three devices that utilize the properties of magnets. He treats the practical applications of magnets, describing the wet floating compass as an instrument in common use, and proposing a new dry pivoted compass in some detail. He also attempts to prove that with the help of magnets it is possible to realize perpetual motion. His device is a toothed wheel which passes near a lodestone so that the teeth are alternately attracted by one pole and repelled by the other. The universal astrolabe text, the Nova Compositio Astrolabii Particularized, describes the construction and use of a universal astrolabe which could be used at a variety of latitudes, without changing the plates, unlike Al-Zarqali's more famous universal astrolabe in which vertical half the heavens were projected onto a plane through the poles. This one had both the northern and southern hemispheres projected onto a plane through the equator. There are no known surviving astrolabes based on this treatise. The use of such an astrolabe is very complicated, and since it is probable that most sophisticated users were not frequent travelers, they were more likely happier with the traditional stereographic planispheric astrolabe. Roger Bacon. The literature often mentions that Peregrinus was praised by Roger Bacon, who called him a perfect mathematician and one who valued experience over argument, but the association of the praise with Peregrinus appears only in a marginal gloss to Bacon's Opus Tertium and only in one of the 5 manuscripts used in the critical edition, which leads us to conclude that it was a later comment added by someone else. That Bacon's praise was for Peregrinus is open to serious debate. Legacy. The influence of Peregrinus's astrolabe was virtually nil. His reputation derives mainly from his work on magnetism. The De Magnete became a very popular work from the Middle Ages onwards, as witnessed by the large number of manuscript copies. The first printed edition of it was issued at Augsburg in 1558 by Achilles Gasser. In 1572, Jean Teisner published from the press of Johann Berkman of Cologne a work entitled Opusculum Perpetuum Memoria Dignissimum, De Natura Magnetisea Jus Effectibus Item de Motu Continuo. This is considered a piece of plagiarism, as Teisner presents, as though his own, the Epistola de Magnete of Peregrinus on a treatise on the fall of bodies by Giambattista Benedetti. William Gilbert acknowledged his debt to Peregrinus and incorporated this 13th-century scientist's experiments on magnetism into his own treatise, called De Magnete. The Epistola de Magnete was later issued by Guillaume Libri, but based on only one manuscript. This edition was full of defects. Corrected editions were published by Timoteo Bertelli 70–80 and G. Helmin. The modern critical edition was prepared by Lauris Sterlis and appears in Petrus Peregrinus de Maricourt, Opera, pp. 63–89. A translation into English has been made by Sylvanus P. Thompson, by Brother Arnold, and H. D. Harridan. The modern critical edition of the astrolabe text was prepared by Ron B. Thompson and appears in Petrus Peregrinus de Maricourt, Opera, pp. 119–196. The philosopher and scientist Charles S. Peirce made a thorough study of the Epistle of Petrus Peregrinus on the lodestone. The Charles S. Peirce-Simon Newcomb Correspondence. Proceedings of the American Philosophical Society, Volume 101, No. 5, p. 411. The European Geosciences Union established the Petrus Peregrinus Medal in recognition for outstanding scientific contributions in the field of magnetism.